You know, the other day I was walking around my neighborhood, I opened some random mailbox, and what did I find inside? I found a brand new, unreleased, new to 2022 4x5 black and white film, FPP Mummy. How lucky am I that I found that in some random mailbox? Also, look at this little handheld thing for my Rode wireless mic. That's pretty cool. I was honored to receive a box of this film pre-release from Mike over at FPP, and I'm going to show you in this video the exposure latitude and some sample shots from this film. Exposure latitude meaning how far can you over or underexpose this film and still get great results. A quick conclusion before we even get started with this video, this film rocks. Honestly, it might be my new go-to 4x5 black and white film over Kodak T-Max 400, which is saying a lot. Now for this video, I only shot 8 shots, and the rest of the box I'll be taking with me on my 48-state road trip across the US to photograph 1,000 strangers with my TLR while asking each of those strangers for life advice. And if you want to learn more about that project, go on over to my Patreon. There's like a 3-minute video there at patreon.com/ImranNuri. Okay, here we go. So obviously under and overexposure matters a little bit less for when you're just digitizing your film than it does for when you're darkroom printing. At this time, I don't do darkroom printing, and so this whole exposure latitude test is more just to know what to expect. I chose to shoot the that is loud. I chose to shoot these bananas in the very same lighting, very same position for all 7 of the exposure latitude shots. First one being metered at ISO 400, which is box speed. And then I shot 1 and 2 stops overexposed, 1 and 2 stops underexposed, and then I did one that was 6 stops overexposed and 6 stops underexposed. Now, as you can see from the negatives alone, you get pretty decent and similar results from normal exposure up to 2 stops overexposed and even 1 stop underexposed. Where things start to get a little bit iffy is the 6 stops overexposed, 2 stops under, and 6 stops under. Now, obviously, the 6 stops overexposed is very dark, but definitely still scannable. And the 6 stops underexposed, not even salvageable. There's essentially nothing there. But here are those same images digitized, and I edited all of them to look as similar to each other as possible using the normal correct exposure, box speed, 400 ISO as a baseline. And you can see there, I mean, from 6 stops overexposed to 1 stop underexposed, all of those shots almost look exactly the same. Where it starts to get a little bit different is 2 stops underexposed, and obviously the 6 stops underexposed, there's nothing there. So when you order a box for yourself and you start shooting Mummy 400 from FPP, now you know, like most other films, it is definitely better to overexpose than to underexpose, which is, now you know, it's good to know. In my opinion, the best shot was the one that I metered for at box speed, at ISO 400. And beyond that, I'd say that your safe zone as far as exposure goes is 1 stop underexposed up to 6 stops overexposed. Anything beyond that on either side and things start to get a little iffy. Oh, by the way, if you're not already subscribed, now would be a great time to do so. You can be among my first 1,000 subscribers, and it would mean the world to me. So go ahead and hit that subscribe button if you're enjoying this so far. I've got more for you though. Hold on. Now I know what you're thinking. Imran, how did you develop the film? And, to be honest, I didn't get a dev chart from Mike at FPP, and that's okay. I figured this was going to be similar to Fomapan 400, and so I developed in D76, diluted 1:1 for 10 minutes and 30 seconds, and I fixed for 5 minutes. I think that was the correct developing time based on what I got. I think the sheets held up really well. When I've shot Arista 400 4x5 in the past, the Arista sheets scratch really easily, and they're really thin. The Mummy sheets were totally fine. They didn't scratch, and they were pretty thick the way I would expect from like T-Max 400. And as I suspected, it had the bright green anti-halation layer, which I prefer to rinse off in a pre-rinse. So I do 2 pre-rinse baths, fill up the tank with water, agitate 10 times, and then do it again. And I don't know if it helps or not, but I don't like having my developer come out all green, and then inevitably my stop bath gets dyed a little bit green as well. So the pre-rinse helps avoid that issue. Here's another by the way. Matt Marash and I got together here in Columbus and shot a few sheets of 8x10 Mummy on my 1889 rapid rectilinear lens that was designed for wet plate cameras way back when, well, literally in late 1800s. So check out the video that he's going to release about Mummy because you'll see those sample shots as well. As far as grain, sharpness, and contrast goes, I was super pleased. I'm not a huge fan of the ultra fine grain that you get with something like HP 5 Plus, but I do like the grain you get with, say, T-Max 400, and I thought that the grain was the perfect size for my personal taste for Mummy 400. I thought they were really, really sharp images. By the way, the grain gets pretty intense with that 6 stops overexposed. Here's a little comparison of the correct exposures grain, and I did add a tiny bit of sharpening in Lightroom compared to the same situation, same editing for the 6 stops overexposed. Obviously, the grain gets, way more intense. As far as contrast goes, again, contrast is not a huge factor when you're just digitizing your film as much as it would be if you were in the dark room, but for digitizing, still, I really liked the contrast. I thought I did a great job, and it did its best with contrast when it was exposed at box speed. That was my experience. Look at me, cool guy just kicking back against a wood fence. Anyway, finally, the 8th sheet that I shot, which was actually the first sheet that I shot, was of my very good friend Steph and her girlfriend Elise. They were in the back seat of their car, and I said this was a great way to symbolize the fact that you both are together, but have chosen to do distance, which is obviously hard if you've ever done distance. Not easy, but they've chosen to do the damn thing, and I think they're doing pretty well. I'm really happy for them. And I told them, too, that in the grand scheme of things, they're some of the first people to ever be photographed on Mummy 400. Now, maybe this is the same thing as Arista 400 or Fomapan 400. I don't know, but it's branded as Mummy 400, and they're some of the first people to ever be photographed on Mummy 400, which is kind of neat, especially in 2022. Who would have thought? Honestly, not even me. So there you have it. Mummy 400, a brand new 4x5 black and white film to 2022, offered by Film Photography Project. I want to thank again Mike from FPP for sending this out to me. I am honored to have been amongst the first to shoot this film, but I highly, highly recommend it. Easily, I think now one of my favorite 400 ISO films, especially for black and white. And I will be shooting a lot more of it. So go get yourself a box of FPP Mummy 4x5 ISO 400 black and white film. I have no incentive for you to do so, but I'm genuinely recommending it. I genuinely believe this is an excellent film. I don't know what the pricing is going to be, but if it's going to be priced anything like FPP Frankenstein, their ISO 200 film, which by the way I have a video about if you want to see that after this, it's going to be a nice, amazing option for a great price. I hope this was helpful. Thanks so much for watching. Subscribe if you're not already subscribed, and I'll see you in the next video.